Karen Wilson pushed her shopping cart through the supermarket with purpose. Her blonde hair was cut in a neat angled bob that swung with each determined step. At 48, she had mastered the art of getting what she wanted, especially when it came to customer service. She stopped at the checkout line and began placing her items on the conveyor belt. Karen checked her watch and frowned. She was already running late for her book club meeting. The cashier, a young man with a name tag that read Joey, was moving too slowly for her liking. "Could you possibly go any slower?" Karen asked, not really expecting an answer. Joey looked up, his smile faltering slightly. "Sorry, ma'am. I'll try to speed things up." Karen nodded and continued to watch him like a hawk. When all her items were scanned, she pulled out a stack of coupons from her purse. "I have these," she said, handing them over. Joey began scanning them one by one until he paused at a paper coupon. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Wilson, but this coupon expired yesterday," Joey said. Karen's eyes narrowed. "That's ridiculous. I just got that in the mail." "The date is right here," Joey pointed at the small print. "May 2nd, today is May 3rd. "This is unacceptable," Karen declared, her voice rising. "I'd like to speak to the manager." Joey sighed and pressed a button on his register. Within minutes, a tired-looking man in a blue shirt approached. "What seems to be the problem?" the manager asked. "Your employee is refusing to accept my coupon," Karen explained, pointing at Joey. "It's only one day past the date. This is just bad customer service." The manager took the coupon and examined it. "Mrs. Wilson, we have to follow company policy on expiration dates." "Do you know how much money I spend in this store every week?" Karen asked, her hands now planted firmly on her hips. "I'm a loyal customer, and this is how you treat me?" As Karen continued her argument with the manager, she failed to notice the strange lights that had begun to flash in the parking lot outside. Other customers were looking toward the windows, pointing and gasping, but Karen was too focused on her mission. "Fine," the manager finally said, defeated. "We'll accept the coupon this time." Karen smiled in victory. "That's all I wanted." "Good. Customer service isn't so hard, is it?" After paying, she pushed her cart toward the exit, already planning her triumphant story for her book club friends. As she stepped into the parking lot, Karen finally noticed that something was wrong. The sky had turned an unusual purple color and a large disc-shaped object hovered above the supermarket. "What in the world?" she muttered, reaching for her phone to take a picture. This would definitely get a lot of likes on her social media page. Before she could unlock her screen, a beam of bright blue light shot down from the strange craft, surrounding Karen completely. She felt her feet leave the ground and her shopping cart fell away beneath her. "Hey!" she shouted, more angry than scared. "Put me down this instant. This is completely unacceptable." Her protests went unheard as she floated upward, toward the opening at the bottom of the craft. The last thing she saw before being pulled inside was the manager and Joey staring up at her, their mouths hanging open in shock. Inside the craft, Karen found herself in a large, round room with smooth metal walls. She wasn't alone. About 20 other women stood around looking confused and upset. Karen recognized several of them from her neighborhood and various community meetings. "What is going on here?" demanded a woman Karen knew from her yoga class. Nancy Peterson was 52, with carefully highlighted hair and expensive workout clothes. "I was just asking to see the studio owner about the temperature in the hot yoga room, and suddenly I'm beamed up like in some sci-fi movie?" "I was at the bank," added Patricia Green, the head of the local PTA. "The teller couldn't even explain why I was charged a fee on my account. I asked for the branch manager, and next thing, I know I'm here." As the women shared their stories, Karen noticed a pattern. They were all middle-aged women who had been in the middle of some kind of complaint or confrontation when they were taken. A door slid open at the far end of the room, and 3 tall, thin creatures walked in. They had grayish-blue skin, large, black eyes, and wore matching silver uniforms. The women fell silent, staring in shock. "Greetings, warrior Karens of Earth," said the creature in the middle, its voice surprisingly clear and English-sounding. "I am Admiral Zakathar of the Grex Imperium. We have been monitoring your planet for many cycles." "Did it just call us Karens?" whispered Nancy to Karen, Karen stepped forward, her fear quickly replaced by indignation. "Excuse me, but you can't just kidnap people like this. I demand to be returned home immediately." The alien tilted its head, looking almost pleased. "Yes, this is exactly the legendary fighting spirit we have observed. The Karen's famous battle cry, 'I demand.'" The creatures turned to each other and made clicking sounds that might have been laughter. "Our data collection has been most successful," said another alien, slightly shorter than Admiral Zuckthar. "We have gathered the most powerful Karens from across the Earth." "I want to speak to whoever's in charge here," Patricia Green declared, stepping forward to join Karen. "Not you assistants, but your actual leader." The aliens looked at each other, their large eyes blinking rapidly. "The Council will be most pleased," Admiral Zuckthar said. "These specimens show all the traits our research identified: unwavering confidence, tactical persistence, and immunity to intimidation." "We are not specimens," Karen shouted, "and I have a book club meeting in 30 minutes. "Your current social appointments are no longer relevant," explained the Admiral. "You have been chosen for a greater purpose. The Grex Imperium faces a terrible enemy, and our scientists have identified the Karens of Earth as our best hope for victory." "This is ridiculous," Karen said, crossing her arms. "I want to go home now." "That is not possible," the Admiral replied. "We are already leaving Earth's atmosphere. You will be trained in our ways and help us defeat the Vespoid Dominion." Through a small window, Karen could see the blue curve of Earth getting smaller and smaller. For the first time, she felt truly afraid. But she wasn't about to let these aliens see that. "Well," she said, drawing herself up to her full height, "if we're going to be here a while, I'd like to file some complaints about your accommodations. And don't even get me started on the way you kidnapped us. I'll need to see all your policies and procedures immediately." The other women nodded in agreement and began making their own demands. The aliens looked startled by this response. Karen. Wilson had no idea why these creatures thought middle-aged women complaining about customer service were some kind of elite warriors. But if they wanted Karens, she was certainly going to give them exactly what they asked for. Karen Wilson stared at the blob of green goo on her plate. It wiggled slightly when she poked it with her spoon. The dining hall of the Grex spaceship was filled with Earth women, all looking equally disgusted at their first alien meal. "This is what they expect us to eat," Karen said, pushing the plate away. "I can't even tell if this is food or cleaning supplies." "I told them I'm gluten-free," said Nancy Peterson, sitting across from Karen. "They just blinked at me with those big bug eyes." It had been 3 days since their abduction. The women had been given small, identical rooms and silver jumpsuits to wear. Karen hated the jumpsuit. It made her look boxy and did nothing for her figure. A tall alien approached their table. This one wore a red stripe on its uniform, which Karen had learned meant it was some kind of officer. "Warrior Karens, I am Training Master VX Plur," the alien said. "Your combat preparation begins today." "Combat?" gasped Patricia Green. "We're not soldiers." The alien tilted its head. "Our research shows that Karens are Earth's most fearsome fighters. Your skills in verbal battle and psychological warfare are legendary across your internet." Karen looked at the others. Was this why they had been taken? Because aliens had misunderstood internet jokes about women like them? "There's been a mistake," Karen said, standing up. "We're not warriors. I'm a dental receptionist." "I sell essential oils," added Nancy. "I organize fundraisers for my children's school," said Patricia. Training Master Vaxplur made a series of clicking sounds. "Your modesty is noted, but our data is clear. You have all demonstrated the key Karen combat traits. You persist against opposition, you escalate conflict strategically, and you are immune to shame tactics." Karen wanted to argue, but realized the alien was describing her confrontation at the supermarket. She had persisted until she got her way, hadn't she? "Follow me to the training arena," Vixplur ordered. The women followed the alien down long, curved hallways until they reached a large open space. The floor was soft and bouncy. Along the walls were racks of strange objects that might have been weapons. "Today we will assess your physical capabilities," Vixplur announced. For the next 2 hours, the aliens put the women through a series of bizarre tests. They had to throw odd-shaped objects at moving targets, climb slippery walls, and dodge beams of colored light. Most of the women were out of breath and complaining loudly by the end. "This is ridiculous," panted Karen, her hands on her knees. "I haven't run like that since high school. I'm going to have bruises everywhere," moaned Nancy. "And these jumpsuits show everything. Who designed these?" Training Master V. Explorer approached with a device that looked like a tablet. "Your physical performance is below expectations." "Well, what did you expect?" Karen asked, still trying to catch her breath. "We're not in our 20s anymore." The alien made some notes on its device. "Physical strength is not the Karen's primary weapon, it seems. Perhaps your power lies elsewhere. If you wanted athletes, you should have abducted people from a gym," Karen said. "Now I'd like to speak to whoever's in charge of accommodations. The mattress in my room is like sleeping on a rock, and there's a weird humming noise all night." Fexpler's large eyes blinked rapidly. "You wish to complain about your living conditions in the middle of combat training?" "Yes," Karen said firmly. "And while we're at it, the food is inedible, these jumpsuits are unflattering, and the bathroom facilities make no sense whatsoever." The other women joined in, each adding their own complaints. Patricia was especially upset about the lack of coffee, and Nancy insisted that essential oils would help with the strange smell in the living quarters. To their surprise, V. Explorer began recording everything they said on its device, nodding enthusiastically. "Yes, this is the legendary Karen power," the alien exclaimed. "You turn any situation into an opportunity to assert dominance. You are unafraid to criticize even your captors." Karen exchanged glances with the other women. They hadn't been trying to show power. They were just genuinely annoyed. "Admiral Zuckathar must see this," the Explorer said. "Continue your complaint assault." Encouraged, Karen crossed her arms. "I want to file a formal complaint about being abducted in the first place. I missed my book club, and I had frozen groceries melting in the parking lot. The lighting in these hallways is terrible," added Patricia. "No wonder you all look so sickly. You need natural light." "And where is your manager?" Nancy demanded. "I've been here 3 days, and not once has anyone in charge checked on our well-being." The Explorer was practically vibrating with excitement. It pressed a button on its wrist, and soon Admiral Zekthar and several other high-ranking aliens entered the training arena. "Training Master, what is happening?" the Admiral asked. "They are demonstrating their Karen combat techniques," the Explorer explained. "They are weaponizing complaints, just as the Earth data suggested." Karen stepped forward. "Admiral, your ship is poorly run. Your crew is unprofessional, your facilities are inadequate, and your food is disgusting." Rather than being offended, the Admiral looked impressed. Such boldness to criticize a military vessel so directly. "We should form a committee," suggested Patricia, "to address these issues properly." "Yes," agreed Nancy. "I propose a Comfort and Services Committee, with subcommittees for food quality, living quarters, and proper attire." The aliens huddled together, discussing in their clicking language. Finally, Admiral Zakthar turned back to the women. "This strategy is unfamiliar to us, but we see its potential. You will be allowed to form these committees as part of your training." Karen smiled. This was her territory now. "We'll need meeting rooms, documentation supplies, and direct access to decision-makers." "And coffee," added Patricia firmly. "We can't be expected to function without coffee." "And proper food," said Nancy, "with options for dietary restrictions." To their surprise, the Admiral agreed to all their demands. As the aliens left, Karen realized they had just gained significant power on the ship. These aliens actually respected their complaints rather than being annoyed by them. "Ladies," Karen said to the group, "I think we might have found a way to make this situation work for us." "Do you think they'll let us go home?" asked a woman named Donna, who had been quietly observing until now. Karen shook her head. "Not yet. But if they think our complaining is some kind of superpower, we should use that. We'll make things more comfortable, learn about their plans, and figure out how to get back to Earth." The other women nodded in agreement. Karen Wilson had never led anything more important than her neighborhood book club, but now she found herself the unofficial leader of Earth's first alien committee. If the Grecs wanted Karens, they would get the full Karen experience, complete with committees, subcommittees, and strongly worded complaints that would make any retail manager tremble. 2 weeks had passed since the abduction, and the Earthwomen had transformed life aboard the Grek spaceship. Karen Wilson sat at the head of a long table in what they now called the conference room. It had previously been some kind of storage area, but after Karen's facilities committee filed 12 complaints, the aliens had converted it to meet their demands. The Food Quality Subcommittee has good news, Patricia Green announced, consulting her notes. They finally figured out how to make something close to coffee. It's purple and smells like cinnamon, but it has caffeine. Excellent work, Karen nodded approvingly. What about the uniform redesign project? Nancy Peterson stood up. We convinced them that these jumpsuits were limiting our Karen powers. The new designs are much more flattering and come in 3 colors. The women around the table nodded with satisfaction. Through sheer persistence and complaint filing, they had made their strange situation almost comfortable. More importantly, they had gained the aliens' trust. Now, Karen said, lowering her voice, has anyone learned more about why we're really here? They keep talking about some enemy and a coming battle. Donna Martinez, a former high school principal, raised her hand. I've been working with their education department. Apparently, we're headed to a peace conference with a species called the Vespoids. Peace conference? Karen repeated. Then why do they need us? The Grecs and Vespoids have been fighting for centuries over territory, Donna explained. The Grecs think we can help them negotiate better terms because of our skills. Before Karen could respond, the door slid open, and Admiral Zikthar entered, with several high-ranking officers. The women immediately sat up straighter. Warrior Karens, the Admiral announced, we have reached our destination. The Vespoid delegation awaits us on the neutral space station. Your moment of glory approaches. Karen exchanged glances with the others. They had been preparing for this without even knowing what this was. Admiral, Karen said carefully, what exactly do you expect us to do at this meeting? The Admiral's large eyes blinked slowly. You will do what Karens do best. You will make demands and not stop until you get what you want. You will ask to speak to higher authorities. You will wear down resistance with persistence. You want us to complain the Vespoids into submission? Patricia asked incredulously. Precisely. The Admiral seemed pleased that they understood. Our intelligence suggests the Vespoids have no defense against Karen tactics. Their hierarchical society makes them vulnerable to your demand escalation strategies. Karen suppressed a laugh. This was absurd, but also potentially their ticket home. If we help you succeed, she said, will you return us to Earth? The Admiral hesitated. If your techniques prove effective, we would need to study them further. That wasn't a yes, Karen said sharply. Let me be clear, Admiral. No deal with the Vespoids unless we get a guaranteed ride home. In writing. The alien made a series of clicks that the women had come to recognize as discomfort. Very well, the Admiral finally agreed. Success with the Vespoids, and you may return to Earth. An hour later, Karen and 5 other women were escorted onto the space station. It was a massive structure suspended in the emptiness of space, with windows that revealed distant stars and swirling nebulas. The Vespoids were not what Karen expected. They resembled giant wasps with narrow waists, 6 limbs, and vibrating wings. Their heads featured compound eyes and waving antennae. Despite their alarming appearance, they wore elaborate robes and moved with careful dignity. Both delegations were seated at a large circular table. Karen noted with satisfaction that the chairs provided for the humans were the ones she had specifically requested after complaining about the original seating arrangements. We begin the negotiation between the Grex Imperium and the Vespoid Dominion, announced a small neutral alien that served as mediator. The terms proposed by the Vespoids are now presented. A Vespoid representative stepped forward and placed a document on the table. Karen picked it up and began reading with the other women looking over her shoulder. This is completely unacceptable, Karen declared after only a few moments. These terms are entirely one-sided. The Vespoid representative buzzed anxiously. These are standard terms based on our military advantage. I'd like to speak to your supervisor, Karen said firmly. Whoever has actual authority to negotiate. The Vespoids buzzed among themselves, clearly confused. In their culture, challenging a designated representative was deeply unusual. I am Zur TK, appointed by the Queen to speak on her behalf. The Vespoid said. Nancy leaned forward. Then your Queen needs to appoint someone with actual decision-making power. We're not interested in wasting time with middle management. The insect-like alien seemed stunned by this approach. Karen pressed the advantage. We'll wait, she said, crossing her arms. But be aware that our time is valuable, and we're tracking every minute of this delay. After more confused buzzing, the Vespoid delegation retreated to communicate with their leadership. Admiral Zakhthar looked at Karen with all 6 eyes wide in what appeared to be amazement. You dismissed their chief. Negotiator within moments, the Admiral whispered. Such boldness, Karen shrugged. Rule 1 of negotiation. Always act like you have the upper hand even when you don't. When the Vespoids returned, they were accompanied by a larger, more elaborately dressed individual. I am Ver Enzit, Royal Advisor to the Queen, the new Vespoid announced. I understand there are concerns with our proposal. Yes, there are, Karen said, standing up. First, Section 3 needs to be completely revised. Second, the resource allocation percentages are ridiculous. Third, we need guarantees about non-aggression that are actually enforceable. For the next several hours, Karen and the other women tore through the proposal point by point. They questioned everything, demanded justifications, and insisted on improvements. When the Vespoids pushed back, Patricia would sigh dramatically and ask, "Is this really the best you can do?" While Nancy would say things like, "We just expected more professionalism from an advanced species." The Vespoids, unused to such tactics, became increasingly flustered. Their wings buzzed at higher pitches, and their antennae twitched nervously. By the end of the day, the Vespoids had conceded on multiple key points. Karen insisted they adjourn until the next day so the Vespoids could reconsider their position and come back with a serious proposal. As they walked back to the Grek ship, Admiral Zakhthar was practically vibrating with excitement. Incredible, the alien exclaimed. The Vespoids gave ground on issues they have been rigid about for centuries. Your Karen powers exceed all expectations. Karen smiled tiredly. Admiral, we're just getting started. Tomorrow we'll really put the pressure on. Back in their quarters, the women gathered to discuss their strategy. They're actually intimidated by us, Donna said with wonder. Did you see how they reacted when you asked for their supervisor? Karen nodded. These Vespoids have a strict hierarchy and never question authority. When we do, it throws them completely off balance. So our plan is to keep pushing until they give the Greks what they want and then we go home? Nancy asked. Not exactly, Karen said, lowering her voice. I've been thinking, what if we negotiate something better than what the Greks are asking? For? Something that benefits both sides? The women looked at her with surprise. The Greks only care about winning, Karen explained. But from what I've seen, this war has been costly for both sides. What if we broker an actual peace? That's ambitious, Patricia said slowly. But if we could pull it off, we'd be heroes to 2 alien civilizations, Karen finished. And maybe they'd give us something better than just a ride home. The women discussed late into the night, planning their approach for the next days. Negotiations. For a group of middle-aged women who had been labeled as difficult customers back on Earth, they were finding that in space, their particular skills made them surprisingly effective diplomats. The second day of negotiations began with a surprise. When Karen and her team entered the meeting room, they found not only the Vespoid delegation, but a new group of aliens they hadn't seen before. What's going on? Karen whispered to Admiral Zakhthar. The Cephalons, the Admiral replied, clearly displeased. The Vespoids have called in their allies. The Cephalons resembled giant octopuses, with bulbous heads and multiple tentacles. They wore no clothing but had various devices attached to their limbs. Their large eyes studied the humans with obvious curiosity. "A tactical move," Karen murmured to the other women. "They're bringing in reinforcements because we rattled them yesterday." The lead Vespoid, Ver Enzit, stepped forward. "We have invited our friends the Cephalons to observe these negotiations. They have been mediators in past conflicts." Karen smiled pleasantly. "How nice. More perspectives are always welcome." The Admiral looked at Karen with concern, but she gave him a reassuring nod. This development actually fit perfectly with their plan. "Before we continue reviewing your proposal," Karen said, addressing the Vespoid delegation, "I'd like to ask the Cephalons a question." One of the octopus-like creatures floated forward. "I am Inc. 7, Senior Observer. You may inquire." "Thank you, Inc. 7, Karen said politely. "In your experience mediating conflicts between the Grecs and Vespoids, what has been the main obstacle to lasting peace?" The Cephalon's tentacles rippled in what might have been surprise. "An unexpected question. The primary obstacle has been mutual distrust and inability to verify compliance with treaty terms." Karen nodded, as if this confirmed her suspicions. "That's what I thought. Both sides make agreements they don't intend to keep because they don't believe the other side will keep their word either." The room fell silent. Karen had stated bluntly what everyone knew, but no one had been willing to say. "That's why we're proposing something different today," Karen continued. She pulled out a document that she and the other women had prepared overnight. A peace treaty with built-in verification and graduated implementation. She handed copies to the Vespoids, Cephalons, and Admiral Zekthar. The Admiral's eyes widened as he skimmed the document. "What is this?" he asked in a low voice. "This is not the outcome we discussed." "It's better than what you discussed," Karen replied firmly. "It gives both sides most of what they want and ends the war permanently." Nancy stepped forward. "Let me walk everyone through the key points." For the next hour, Nancy outlined their proposal. The disputed territories would be divided more equitably. Trade routes would be shared. A joint council with representatives from both species would resolve future conflicts. Most importantly, the Cephalons would serve as independent monitors to ensure both sides upheld their commitments. "This is unexpected," said Verenzi, antennae twitching rapidly. "Innovative," added Inc. 7, tentacles moving in what appeared to be an approving pattern. Admiral Zekthar pulled Karen aside while the others discussed the details. "This was not our mission," the alien hissed. "The Grecs' High Command expects victory, not compromise." Karen crossed her arms. "Let me ask you something, Admiral. How long has this war been going on?" 73 of your Earth years," the Admiral admitted. "And how many Grecs' lives has it cost?" The Admiral's eyes dimmed slightly. "Too many. This plan gives your people 90% of what they want without losing any more lives," Karen said. "I call that a win." Before the Admiral could respond, Donna called them back to the table. "The Vespoids have some concerns about Section 5, she announced. For the rest of the day they worked through the details of the treaty. The Vespoids pushed back on certain points, but each time the Earth women used their Karen tactics to keep the negotiations moving forward. When the Vespoids insisted they needed more time to consider a particularly difficult concession, Patricia sighed dramatically. "We've already been very patient," she said in that tone that Earth retail workers knew all too well. "We've accommodated so many of your requests. It's disappointing to see this lack of flexibility on your part." The Vespoid representatives' wings buzzed in what seemed like embarrassment. "Perhaps we could be somewhat more flexible," Verenzet conceded. By late afternoon, they had reached agreement on most points. The remaining issues would require consultation with the Vespoid Queen and the Grecs' High Command. As they prepared to adjourn for the day, Inc. 7 approached Karen. "Your methods are unlike any I have observed in my 60 cycles as a mediator," the Cephalon said. "We have a saying on Earth," Karen replied, "the squeaky wheel gets the grease." "I do not understand this metaphor," Inc. 7 admitted. "It means those who complain the loudest get what they want," Karen explained. On Earth, we were called Karens because we complained too much. Here, it turns out complaining is a diplomatic skill. The Cephalon's eyes blinked thoughtfully. Fascinating. Your species has much to teach us. Back on the Grek ship, Admiral Zikthar called an emergency meeting with Karen and her team. Several high-ranking Grex officers were present, looking distinctly unhappy. The High Command has reviewed your peace proposal, the Admiral announced. They are displeased. They expected conquest, not compromise. That's short-sighted, Karen replied. This treaty gives the Grek stable access to the resources you need without the constant cost of war. Resources are not the only objective, said a severe-looking Grex official. There is also the matter of honor and dominance. Karen rolled her eyes, a gesture the aliens had come to recognize as dismissive. With all due respect, she said in a tone that suggested very little respect at all, that's ridiculous. Honor doesn't feed your people or build your civilization. Peace does. How dare you speak to the War Minister this way? Gasped an aide. 2. Everyone's surprised, the War Minister made a sound that resembled laughter. The Earth Karen uses her powers on us now. Bold. Most bold. Karen exchanged glances with the other women. Their reputation had grown to the point where even being rude to high officials was interpreted as some special Earth technique. Minister, Karen said, softening her approach slightly. We were brought here to help the Greks succeed. This treaty represents success. It may not be the victory you imagined, but it's a victory nonetheless. The War Minister considered her words. The High Command will require convincing. Then let us speak to them directly, Karen suggested. No. Intermediaries. Impossible, the aide sputtered. The High Command does not meet with what? Karen challenged. With the very warriors you abducted from Earth to solve your problems? The ones you've been calling your secret weapon? After a tense silence, the War Minister nodded. The Karen makes a valid point. They will address the High Command tomorrow, before the final negotiation session. As the Grex officials left, the Earth women gathered in a tight circle. We're walking a fine line here, Donna warned. If we push too hard, they might decide we're more trouble than we're worth. Karen nodded. That's why tomorrow is crucial. We need to convince the High Command that this peace treaty is in their best interest, and then finalize it with the Vespoids before anyone changes their mind. And make sure they keep their promise to send us home, Nancy added. One step at a time, Karen said. Tomorrow we face the ultimate managers. If we can handle Black Friday sales and school board meetings, we can handle alien commanders. That night, as the other women slept, Karen stayed up reviewing their treaty. It was surreal to think that a group of middle-aged women from Earth were negotiating peace between two alien civilizations. Back home, they had been dismissed as entitled and difficult. Here, those same traits made them respected and feared. Karen smiled at the irony. Perhaps being a Karen wasn't so bad after all, if it meant standing your ground and not taking no for an answer. Sometimes, the universe needed people willing to ask to speak to the manager. The Grex High Command met in a grand chamber aboard their largest battleship. Karen Wilson and her team stood before 7 elderly Grex aliens seated on elevated platforms. These leaders had wrinkled blue skin and wore elaborate metal headpieces that Karen thought looked rather silly, though she kept that opinion to herself. We have reviewed your peace proposal, said the eldest Grex, whose name was Grand Commander Zivlor. It is not what we expected when we collected Earth's Karen warriors. What did you expect exactly? Karen asked, maintaining direct eye contact with the Grand Commander. Total surrender of the Vespoids, the alien replied simply. The Karens of Earth were to be our ultimate weapon. Karen took a deep breath. This was the moment everything depended on. Grand Commander, with all due respect, that was never going to happen. The Vespoids are too strong. This conflict has dragged on for over 70 years with no clear winner. The Grand Commander's eyes narrowed. You doubt our eventual victory? I'm practical, Karen replied. Let me ask you this. What do you really want? To defeat the Vespoids? or to secure your people's future prosperity? The High Command exchanged glances, clearly unused to being questioned so directly. Karen pressed on. This treaty gives the Grecs access to 90% of the resources you need. It opens trade routes that have been closed for decades. It allows your people to live without the constant threat of war. And we are to trust the Vespoids to honor these terms? Asked another commander. That's why we brought in the Cephalons as neutral observers, Karen explained. They will monitor both sides. Any violations will be immediately reported. Nancy stepped forward. Our research shows that the Grecs' economy has suffered greatly during this war. Your military spending has doubled in the last decade alone. The Grand Commander looked surprised. How did you access those statistics? We filed a formal request with your finance ministry, Patricia said matter-of-factly. They were very helpful once we explained we needed the information for our work. Karen suppressed a smile. The Grecs' bureaucracy had no defense against determined middle-aged women who knew how to navigate administrative systems. The point is, Karen continued, peace will allow you to redirect those resources to improving life for your citizens. Isn't that a true victory? The High Command conferred among themselves in low voices. Finally, Grand Commander Zavlor spoke. Your arguments have merit, Karen of Earth. We will consider this treaty as a viable option. Karen knew that consider wasn't good enough. Grand Commander, the final negotiation session is today. We need your full support now, not later. The elderly. Alien's eyes widened at her directness. You dare pressure the High Command? I dare to ask for a clear decision, Karen replied firmly. We've worked hard to create a solution that benefits everyone. If you truly value our Karen abilities, then trust our judgment on this. After a tense silence, the Grand Commander nodded slowly. Very well. The High Command authorizes you to finalize this treaty on behalf of the Grecs Imperium. Karen and her team tried not to look too triumphant as they left the chamber. Once they were alone in the corridor, they exchanged relieved smiles. That went better than I expected, Donna said. They've never encountered anyone who stands up to them, Karen replied. Their whole society is based on hierarchy and obedience. When we challenge them directly, they don't know how to respond. Just like the manager at my grocery store, Nancy laughed. The final negotiation session was held on the neutral space station. All parties were present. The Vespoid delegation, the Cephalon mediators, the Grecs officials, and the Earth women. We have reviewed the proposed treaty, announced Ver Nzati, the lead Vespoid negotiator. The Queen finds many aspects acceptable, but requires adjustments to Section 9 regarding the Outer Moon territories. Karen had anticipated this. We're prepared to discuss reasonable modifications, she said. But the core principles must remain intact. For hours, they worked through the final details. Both sides made small concessions. The Cephalons offered helpful suggestions when the discussions became heated. By late afternoon, they had a completed document that all parties could accept. We have achieved what many thought impossible, said Inc. 7, the Cephalon mediator. A peaceful resolution to a conflict that has spanned generations. The signing ceremony was formal and solemn. As representatives of each species added their marks to the treaty, Karen felt a strange mixture of pride and disbelief. Who would have thought that being labeled a Karen on Earth would lead to becoming a peacemaker among the stars? After the ceremony, Admiral Zakhthar approached Karen and her team. The High Command is pleased with the outcome, the Admiral said, though they would never admit it publicly. And our agreement? Karen asked. We get to go home now. The Admiral hesitated. There is a complication. Karen's eyes narrowed. What complication? The High Command is impressed by your abilities. They wish to study the Karen techniques further. Perhaps another mission. Absolutely not, Karen said firmly. We had a deal. Mission accomplished. We go home. Today. The Karen powers are too valuable to... Karen cut him off. Let me be very clear, Admiral. If we don't go home as agreed, we will use our Karen powers against the Grecs in ways you cannot imagine. Is that a threat? The Admiral asked, eyes blinking rapidly. It's a promise, Karen replied. We will file complaints at every level of your government. We will form committees to investigate every aspect of Grek society. We will demand to speak to every supervisor from here to the farthest reaches of your empire. The other women nodded in agreement, crossing their arms and fixing the admiral with stern looks. The admiral stepped back, clearly alarmed. That will not be necessary. I will arrange your transport immediately. 3 days later, Karen Wilson and the other Earthwomen stood in the teleportation chamber of the Grek ship, which had returned to orbit around their home planet. The coordinates are set for your original abduction locations, the technician explained. Time has passed differently due to space travel effects. Only 3 weeks have elapsed on Earth. Our families must be worried sick, Patricia said. The Grek's High Command extends its gratitude, Admiral Zakhthar said formally. Your service to our empire will be recorded in our historical archives. Just make sure the peace treaty is upheld, Karen replied. That's all the thanks we need. 1 question before you depart, the Admiral said. On your planet, why is the term Karen considered negative? Your abilities are clearly valuable. Karen smiled ruefully. It's complicated. Sometimes standing up for yourself and being persistent gets misinterpreted as being difficult. But I think we've learned that every trait has its proper time and place. Indeed, the Admiral agreed. In the vast cosmos, everything has purpose. With a final goodbye, the women were teleported back to Earth. Karen found herself standing in the supermarket parking lot where her adventure had begun. Her shopping cart was still there, though the groceries were long gone. As she walked to her car, she noticed the store manager watching her nervously from the entrance. The same manager who had argued with her about the expired coupon what felt like a lifetime ago. Karen smiled and waved politely. She no longer felt the need to make a fuss about small things. After negotiating peace between alien civilizations, an expired coupon seemed rather trivial. Over the following months, the women stayed in touch, meeting regularly to discuss their extraordinary experience. They had agreed to keep it secret, knowing no one would believe them anyway. I handled an angry parent at the school board meeting yesterday, Patricia told the group during one of their gatherings. I just smiled and thought, I faced down the Grek's High Command. This is nothing. I've stopped complaining at restaurants, Nancy admitted. Unless the service is truly terrible. Karen nodded in agreement. We've seen the universe, negotiated peace between alien species and changed the course of galactic history. It puts things in perspective. Do you think they're honoring the treaty? Donna asked. I like to think so, Karen replied. And if not, they know we might come back. The women laughed at this, raising their coffee cups in a toast. They had gone to the stars as Karens, and returned as something more, women who understood. The power of standing firm, speaking up, and demanding better. Not just for themselves, but for everyone. Karen Wilson looked out the window at the sky. Somewhere up there, alien civilizations were living in peace because a group of middle-aged women from Earth had taught them something valuable. Sometimes the universe needs someone willing to speak to the manager,